You probably know that pain and emotion are pretty much the same thing. But pain and muscle tone go closely in concert. The commonest pain in the world, a tension headache, is basically because of the orbicularis and the occipitus muscles pulling things into a band. Globus, the tightness of the throat. Anywhere, or the chest, the tightness of the chest. Anywhere there's a band of muscle and tightness, which is usually due to increased muscle tone, which is usually due to anxiety or fear or horror or shock, will tighten that up and give physical symptoms. And you'll get people getting ECGs for their chest pain when actually the anxiety is steering them all along. Become familiar with the relationship between increased muscle tone and pain. It's a very common thing. That is invariably accompanied by heart rate and breathing. The number of people who, having a fearful tachycardia, think they're about to have a heart attack is very common, and people taking their request at face value will spend valuable time wasting on a completely normal ECG when they should be learning a breathing technique from the very, very beginning. Everybody in this room should know something about square breathing or simple mindful breathing techniques that they can teach their clients. I'm talking about lawyers as well, because let's face it, when you're actually doing your initial assessment for your client, you're going to be confronting these very distressed people just as much as anybody else. So knowing something about breathing techniques is a very, very useful thing. It is a very good way of preparing for what we call grounding, to which I will return a little later. Learning to control the extent to which your adrenaline, your fear, your body arousal levels can be managed is crucial. Watch out for fatigue as well, because anxiety is exhausting. It consumes a lot of energy. And look at sleep pattern. Do they go to sleep early? They have difficulty going to sleep? Do they wake up in the middle of the night? And you'll find that some patients who've had a catastrophic bodily loss, in the first 2-3 minutes after waking up will feel happy. And then they'll go to get out of bed and they'll get there, oh God, it's not there. Oh fuck, it's real, it's still there. That map is still telling you that that limb is there when it's not. That hand that no longer stirs the tea, that no longer cuddles its loved one in the same way, is no longer there. Those things take time, and in the first few hours, minutes before waking, sometimes after waking, that punctuating thought can be very distressing. Also, let's think about the way in which we progress emotionally when we go through a catastrophic loss. The initial phase is numbness. That's how it's supposed to be. When you're trying to disconnect from something that's been, in your case, 20, 30 or 40 years around, and in the case of the species or human life, for millions and millions of years, it's going to take a while for things to not work out. Numbness, withdrawal are completely healthy, normal things. How long they go on for depends upon the context and the setting, to which of course we'll return in a minute. And it's quite common for those things over days, weeks, sometimes months, if it's really bad, to move from a state of numbness into a state of horror, a sense of shock, a sense of dissociation. And the sort of stories that your clients will begin to tell you will often be about bargaining or unable to imagine, and if they're really numb and dissociated, look for people saying things like, it's as if I'm not here, or it's as if the world's not here, or it's as if there's a sheet between me and the world. It's as if I can't believe it's happened. It's as if this kind of numb disbelief is a very, very common feature. Listen out for it, and by listening and recognizing it, you are sending a non-verbal signal that says, I get you. And that I get you vibe is crucial to a smooth progress through the whole recovery process. Every interview is an opportunity to do a form of psychotherapy. Appearing unfazed, compassionate and understanding lies at the heart of any relationship, especially a therapeutic one. Very often, because there's no such thing as a happy, angry, anxious person, they will become more and more depressed. Anxiety is usually a short-term thing, because you know about biological symptoms. You're looking out for the heart rate, the breathing, the loss of appetite and the fatigue. But eventually that will give way to a state of sadness. And that gives way to this strange thing we call depression. Now depression and sadness are two very different things. Sadness is healthy. Malignant sadness, as one famous writer once put it, is another thing altogether. Malignant sadness isn't the stifling presence of sadness, it's the absence of capacity for anything else. The loss of a capacity for any positive emotional response. And it doesn't necessarily manifest as sadness, but as flatness. So one of the most useful questions you can ask for someone is, tell me about the happiest time of your life. Now, you prepare them for it, you don't ask that question out of the blue, but very often if they go into their heart and all they do is draw a blank, that's when you're heading from sadness into depression. Notice how even of those of us who've had the most painful of losses, within hours sometimes, or minutes, or weeks, or days, can actually cheer up for a moment because they can go back to that place. So there are many, many things that happen, but if you're looking for the diminution of capacity for any positive emotional response, which we call anhedonia, that is heading towards depression, especially if it lasts for a week or 3 or 4, and the sleep pattern remains disturbed, and anxiety and all the other things are there, and they're still preoccupied with WTF, what's going on in my world? Now, beyond that, it gets tricky. A really useful thing for all of you would be to go away from this talk and just write down as many words for emotions as you can. Bring them to mind. Because once we've gone beyond those typical opening so-called stages of grief, if you like, you move into a world which is unique to the individual. And boy, does it get crazy. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Beyond sadness lies a whole shitfest of potential emotions to which you could be subjected. Shame, guilt, rejection, regression, projection onto other people, anger, gaslighting, self-loathing, suspicion, paranoia, they're out to get me, that guy. Wait till I see the CCTV camera footage. All those kind of things can really, really completely smother not only you, but the loved ones and the members of the therapeutic team who are trying to coordinate. That can very often lead to the most striking thing of all, which is mutism. Going away, not eating, losing weight. I'm worried about him, he hasn't drunk anything for days. And that can sometimes lead in the direction of people saying, I don't want to die anymore, I don't want to live anymore, I want to die. Now, that's quite a common feature. Some of these things are quite strange. A capacity for magic and climbing into a world is a very, very, very powerful thing. It's if only. Have you ever had an argument with someone who's important to you, and you're not getting on too well, and as you walk away, you think of all the clever things you could have said, but you didn't because you were upset and you love her. It's the kind of things that are going in a conversation. But what you can do is you can live in that world. You can go into an imagined counterfactual world completely opposite to the fact and live in it. I've still got 2 legs. I can still play the piano. And you can't. Some people, with their mutilated hand or what's left of it, who actually got, say, to concert standard, can do that with their hand. It's those maps again. And they actually see the Mozart on the piece of paper in front of them as they're playing the right hand of a piano concerto. Doing that keeps you stuck. Letting go of it is a very brave and difficult thing to do. So watch out for people who are actually intentionally reliving, or even worse, those who relive it when they don't want to, the so-called flashback, the ghastly, intrusive thing that comes like a bulldozer into the head and, nah, it's not going away, I didn't need this. Watch those things and explore them. A few questions you can ask. Are they biographic? Are they real? Is this like a video clip that's flashing in your head? Is it biographically detailed? Does it unfold in full time, or is it just that machine going beep, beep, beep that gets them? And you will find that some people who've been in a hospital for a long time, especially intensive care, will have a sensitivity to various apps. You look at the dial tones and the alarms they have, and there's no beeps on them. People are very sensitive because when you're in that state of heightened fear, the thing that comes into your mind is the last thing you want to hear again. You will avoid it. You will avoid that sound. As time goes on, sometimes months, sometimes years, the ideas in the mind will start to change. Then, of course, there are the things that trigger it. Sometimes they can be just, the bleeping sound, but other times it could be something you watched on television. What upsets you? Or you could say to the partner, what does he not like to watch? Oh, it's always that bit in James Bond where ... or something. Other times it could be the sound of a passing ambulance. Be aware of the things that people see and how they see it. Is it a sound? Is it in the gut? They remember it? They remember it up here? Exploring these things again will broadcast a sense of omniscient compassion and understanding on your part, which is very important. Now, what is it that makes a person actually want to kill themselves? The answer is not much. It's despair and helplessness, but I can say not much with confidence because most people who think of suicide don't do it. We're talking about 96%. Most talk of suicide has nothing to do with dying. But it is very often, here we go again, a counterfactual. If I was dead, I'd be free. I'd be free of this. The rehab, all the things I've got coming ahead, the bloody pain, that operation I'm going to have to fold in the neuroma in my limb stump, because that's been kept me awake for months and I'm fucking knackered. Those sort of things will lead the person to feeling that he or she has got no way out, and they can retreat into an alternative fantasy, which is a place to stay for a while, but you're there waiting for them in that door and encouraging them to open it and go through. Those things will come in tearful, emotionally charged conversations where sometimes just sitting there and listening, not doing something straight away, but just sitting there and being there once you've built a good relationship is absolutely crucial. And sometimes words, as Hamlet said. When you really lose something profound in your life, the best words are no words. Try remembering that the dignity of this occasion, actually, if you can get that across in some way, you are accelerating the speed at which this person will be willing to buy into the whole rehab process. It's profound and important. I'm asking you to dig into your inner humanity here, to look at the ways in which these things can be quantified and standardised in a way, and then used uniquely for each case. And that means exploring the impact of the suicidal ideation on, well, how would your daughter feel? Your sister, have you thought about what you might have at the funeral? What sort of music would you play? Well, you have a question you think fits this particular person because you've explored their ideas. And if they're still talking about it, explore their methods, their means and their motives. Have they looked at the internet? Do they know where to get the cyanide from on the darknet? Do they know they're going to put the noose and those kind of things? These things sound like terrifying things to talk about. Have the courage to say, have you thought about how you might do it and take it from there? Explore those things, and even then, the process of bringing this to the stark reality, having just talked about their daughter's wedding next week, will sometimes lead to a collision inside themselves that actually can generate insight. It's tricky, it takes courage to do it, and if you haven't got that courage and you're worrying about it, call the psych on the team. This is what we do for a living. As I say, withdrawal is very common early on, and really, of course, the first thing you do is resume independent self-care. Now, wiping your bottom or changing a tampon or going to an upright urinal with one hand is something that takes courage and time and practice. These things can be done, but but looking at the most basic private aspects of things is very, very important. Earlier on, I mentioned the importance of belonging. At the very back of your mind, always in a close, loving relationship, pay attention to the changing couple dynamics. A relationship where they loved each other equally will very often weather quite healthily. A relationship where he's doing all the work and who knows what he's doing on the side, and she is at home looking after all the children, that's the usual stereotype. Often it's reversed. That can lead to very interesting shifts in the dynamics where actually the mum quite likes, being in this caring role. And if that man's been beating her with that now absent hand for the last 5 or 10 years, it can get very, very nasty indeed. So knowing the complexities of the couple dynamics, otherwise knowing the person's history, is really important. I'm watching for the idea of the loving wife who's reaching breaking point because the rehab hasn't quite come through or the NHS appointment's been cancelled yet again. So true these days. And this steadily mounting accumulation of small knocks that makes a big blow for the poor person doing the caring. So look about and think about couple dynamics. And then the behaviours that go on as part of that process. Is it punishing, accusing, blaming, projection, resentment? I hate you. You never ever do it one. You're not doing it like this in the care plan, are you? Useless you are. And these crazy rages that can take place can actually sweep like a tornado through the lives of a previously happy family. The same is also one of regression, clinging, excessive demanding of care. I can't do it. Oh, I can't do technology. Come on, you used to write code before you did this. Oh, I don't know how computers work. You can see these catastrophizing, exaggerated ideas, and anxious people will catastrophize. And you have to ask yourself, is this a reasonable chain of belief? I am disabled. I have lost both of my legs. I can no longer work in this job in the market. How can I run my market stall from a wheelchair? People will ignore me. I'll miss me. I'll be irrelevant. I will no longer be an earner. My wife's a cleaner. She can't do anything, so we're going to lose our rent on our house. We won't be able to get a payment because my PIP hasn't come through yet, so we'll be homeless. We'll be street homeless. We'll be on the streets with my children. My children will be kidnapped. One of them will die. At what point does that sequence of thoughts become ridiculous? It's sometimes, if you're buying into it, you have to make a decision on when catastrophization is getting in the way of the process. Are they getting stoned? Are they relying on too much gabapentin? Are they knocking back other drugs? Or are they getting their pot-smoking son to bring it for them? Knowing a little bit about what sort of other things people are resorting to, and particularly checking their internet habits, because you know an awful lot about a person these days by doing a Google search of what they've been scrolling through. These things are very, very important. And trying throughout all of this to help them to rediscover or reconnect with previously valued roles, albeit in a different way, you know? Sure, your hands are no longer there for a piano, but with a good principle. I mean, I've seen one patient with 2 front-hand prostheses who was absolutely a brilliant xylophonist. Started out as a pianist. That rhythm's still in there. That's in another bit of the map inside you, but it's still there. How to do all this? Take a history. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? Were your mum and dad together? Was there love in the house? All right, so your dad wasn't around, okay, but you weren't around either. Oh, I see. Oh, so your family originated from Ghana? Yeah, I see. Oh, and you were. So your mum stayed here. You came over and lived with your auntie, but it's not uncommon for in Asian and African communities to have a completely different approach to what we call the nuclear family, which is a very brittle thing that 50% of which now fall apart, of course. So don't necessarily force your own ideas of a normal upbringing onto other people, but try and work out who they are, where they came from. Was your mother happy? Where were you in the birth order? Has your mother ever become depressed after birth? Unstable attachments can be crucial for this inner sense of self. Anyone here who's a mum or a dad who's raised a child will know, have I harmed my child by my own selfishness? There isn't an adult on this planet that doesn't have that thought at some point. And if they do, I'll show you a psychopath. Looking at the sort of things that a good enough upbringing will lead you to be a good enough person, and that's crucial. People who haven't got that are much more likely to develop regressive or abusive or challenging, angry, therapy, disrupting processes when it comes to the whole process of rehabilitation. So, ask yourself a few basic questions, because sometimes what we think of strengths are weaknesses. What's done really brilliant for you as a concert pianist is no good without hands. Coping with adversity and change and neglect and abuse and trauma. Virtually all trauma in children is committed by adult males. I'm afraid it's a very, very common thing, far more common than none of us dare admit. But if those things are going to happen, and you spent most of your life trying to keep those things out of your mind, they will return when you are lying in bed hallucinating or being frightened and sad and lonely, or all you've got is the beep, beep, beep of the machinery to come, and you're praying for the next time the nurse comes and does your blood test, to give you someone to talk to, or to take your blood pressure at 3 a.m. to give you company. So, adversity, change, and neglect can resurface. Remember those things. That's why that man's behaving the way he is. And some people are buttoned up. We live in an emotionally constipated culture called the United Kingdom. But deep down inside, are they driven at a level of individual? Have they got a high capacity for tolerance? Anyone that runs a marathon, okay, I promise you, has learnt to tolerate pain. Anyone that's climbed a mountain, particularly a big one, has learnt to tolerate pain, fatigue, and the fear that this is the worst thing he or she has ever done. Those things are wonderful if they define you. But if that's all that defines you, that you're athletic, then when your limb has come and gone, or your hand has come and gone, or whatever, that will be a curse. The person that says, I can handle it, and has never really talked about what it's like to be frightened and sad and scared, won't handle it so well. So understanding how helping people make the best of the thing that they've lost psychologically as well as physically is very, very important. Another way to ask is, are they optimistic or pessimistic? The glass half empty, half full question. Are they sociable or are they shy? That doesn't predict anything, by the way. Pain, as I say, is the only sense that comes with mood built in. And if a person complains of pain, treat them like it's pain. The last thing you ever do is sow a seed of doubt in them about their pain, no matter how frustrating it is for everybody involved. Saying it's real is not. If it's a stump pain, take it extremely seriously. As we've heard this morning, move quickly as is possible given the circumstances. And I'm providing you with a framework for those circumstances here. Phantom pain is one thing, it's horrible. What's almost as bad, for some, worse, is the weird idea I'm lying in bed and both of my legs are bent and they're going through the floor, onto the bed, through the bed onto the floor. And I hate it, except it's weirdly nice, but I hate it. The idea that I can still hear the music when I do that. From almost the phantoms that actually exist aren't just pain and body movements, they manifest in thousands of ways that are best explored by asking the patient to describe them to you. And you'll find again, you get it. Those things, I say, can as it were, seed or further the relationship. Going home and meeting the gaze of yourself in a place where you were previously able-bodied is a real challenge. I'm sure many of you will know that. Preparing them for it, anticipating the idea that actually, it's a two-bedroom flat, two-story mezzanine, and the toilet's up there, and it's going to be a commode and a mattress in the kitchen until we can get something sorted. Preparing and avoiding those things if you can. The person returning to somewhere as close to what they had, so they can focus on those changes. That upheaval is really, really crucial. Peer support, I think, outside of the therapeutic team can be fantastic. My meat porter went home, and they called him Cripple in the pub, and they all laugh. And he goes, yeah, that's him. And I say, yeah, Cripple, get rid of it if you get next round in, that kind of thing. That kind of language, obscene or rather rude to me, but it's how it is, They're my mates, they're my lads. And the guy is very quickly sort of reinserted into that place where all sorts of funny names for a person with one leg missing are now part and parcel of his nickname. Now, he's the kind of guy that can take it, soak it up, and give it back. But those kind of things are, points that are really quite important, that someone else, very often from outside in a strange way, can be very, very powerful and important. Beware the effects of litigation, especially when the CCTV thing comes out or when the criminal investigation is reaching a conclusion and the person is acquitted with a fine, the driver or whatever. The other crucial thing is, for all this information, if you make a discovery, write it down in the record and share it. It's really crucial. Again and again and again here you've heard about multidisciplinary team connecting. If you find out an important fact, she's just disclosed the fact of child sexual abuse at the age of 12. And it's coming into the nightmares. Share that with the case manager. You have, above all, to be on good terms with the case manager, because I think the case manager really is the conductor that conducts the orchestra. They are profoundly relevant people in these situations. Now, all of these pieces of understanding can be shared by everybody in their own different way and used. But I think probably the most important thing is that in every one of these interventions, the underlying motive is to nurture the idea of hope, use humour, sometimes black humour if necessary, and above all, create a sense of acceptance. But what you're asking them to accept is that it's a new way of life. And those acceptances really involve embracing, sustaining throughout a sense of progress, understanding these psychological, social, behavioural, emotional, cognitive things that happen, to create a new sense of yourself as whole that has new goals and new intentions. Think of my patient playing the xylophone. New capabilities, same thing in a way. New belongings, who knows, something spiritual, maybe joining something that's bigger than yourself in some way, or just reconnecting with a family from who you withdrew disgrace earlier on because of your thinking about yourself. New ways of desiring and being desired. The time when a young woman who's always formed a strong idea of herself as a young, beautiful, sensual woman can again make love to her loved one with the lights on. Try and think of the new ways in which you can actually rebuild that acceptance into the intimacy. And most, I think, in some ways, this is a very hard thing to sum up, new ways of relating to the fact that we're all going to die. And the most important thing we can do is to show kindness and love and respect to each other and give. Never mind what we're doing for you, what can you give for them? A lot of people after an injury say, I'm going to run a charity. And some months later, they've forgotten that. Keep that going if you can, because connecting to something bigger than yourself is ultimately the most powerful thing of all.